What is going on, guys? Jack here, and welcome back to episode 10 of The Race, here with Kingston Sprint, and today we have our end of season 1 review. We're going to take a look at where things went right, where things went wrong, where we can improve, and kind of just give you a little bit of an overview, I guess, as to how this season has gone, because, of course, with it being the first season in the club's existence, there was not really an expectation, I guess, set. I wasn't really sure where we were going to finish. As I mentioned kind of very early on, I did a number of simulations testing this database, and I saw Kingston Sprint kind of finish as high as we have finished with an AI manager, and I also saw them finish rock bottom. So in all honesty, I didn't really know what was realistically attainable for us, but I'm really happy with our first season. Obviously, the way we crashed out of the playoffs, a little bit disappointing against Toronto, but they are by far and away, at least from what I can see, the strongest team in MLS. So I don't think there's much shame in going out to them. But, in terms of building the squad, I feel like we've got a really solid little group of players here. I'm pretty happy with the overall team balance. It's a squad made up of, some very, very talented players. I'm looking at the likes of Julian Green, Kamar Lawrence, Jermaine Anderson, Daniel Johnson. And even the backups, players like Jason Johnson, Craig Farley, not Jason Johnson, we've already said him, but Montrose Finn as well. Players who have been able to chip in and all perform well when we've needed them to. And to be honest, I don't think the kind of whole squad building element of our first season could have gone all that better. You kind of look across the team, you look at the performances. It's been great by a lot of players. Fabian McCarthy, the surprise package of the year, has performed absolutely superbly. And actually, if we go, you can see here we have all the different awards. You can see Otti won kind of Rookie of the Year. Clennon, runner-up in the MVP award. Lawrence, Comeback Player of the Year, a player who, it'd be fair to say, in his last kind of season, he played awful. He played 4 games for New York, 6.68 average rating. We gave him a chance. We played him. And this guy really has rewarded us with some superb performances this year. I think that would be a good way to look at it. In terms of Coach of the Year, I'm a little bit annoyed we didn't get it, but you can see here we did come third in the end. You can see Vancouver and Toronto's managers finishing ahead of us. And in fact, we actually look at the MLS Best 11. Ike Opara, I didn't know really what to expect from this guy. Obviously, he has a few injuries over the year. But all in all, the centre-back just absolutely superb. Won USA Player of the Year. And also Daniel Johnson in his first season in the kind of MLS. I mean, this guy has just put in one of the best kind of sequences of performances I can remember in FM for a player. He's really had a great breakthrough season. I guess the performances haven't been the greatest, but he's got some massively important goals for us. He really has excelled in MLS. And of course, he's broken into the Jamaica national team this year. And that, for a 25-year-old, he's showing signs of kind of some nice late development. You can see, obviously, he joined us from Preston. A fairly hefty fee, $4.5 million, but he really has rewarded us with some superb performances so far. So anyway, let's have a look, I guess, at the league to begin with and how we got on in the league. Of course, the Supporter Shield here, we finished third. There's no shame in that whatsoever. Only 1 point behind Philadelphia, but of course we did knock them out in the playoffs. Toronto winning the entire thing as well. I mean, fair play to them. Toronto this year, a very, very tough team to beat. You can see they did actually win in the MLS Cup final as well. They beat Vancouver to get there, which, I mean, Vancouver, I feel a little bit kind of sad for them, really, because they did very, very well to kind of get as far as they did. You can see they did finish kind of top in their conference as well, which, I mean, there's no shame in that. And the fact that we finished above them and came third, I mean, it's a little bit bittersweet, I guess. It's the way the conferences are divided, but of course, Vancouver, they technically finished second, we technically finished joint third, I guess. But the league itself, it was a bit hit and miss. We scored loads of goals, which is obviously absolutely fantastic, but I think it'd be fair to say we do need to kind of tighten up a little bit defensively. We lost a few games. 5-1 against New England sticks out. 4-0 against Philadelphia. 3-0 against DC United. 5-3 against Vancouver. There's a fair few games here that we lost whilst conceding a lot of goals, and that is something I do want to look at. I don't feel like defensively we're particularly weak, and perhaps you could attribute some of those losses down to kind of players being on international duty. But, I want to cut those games out because those games are kind of matches which really did hurt us in the long run of the season. But all in all, MLS form very, very good indeed. Of course, in the Caribbean Club Championship, no complaints here. Of course, this is the tournament that we play in to qualify for the North American Champions League. I expect us to do this kind of every year, finish top 3 in the competition and find ourselves in the North American Champions League. We are by far and away the kind of strongest team in the Caribbean. But, I mean, you can see here in the final, we did get taken to extra time, so it wasn't perhaps as comfortable as I'd like. Another kind of competition where, realistically, we should be winning this every year, and this year, of course, we didn't. The JFF Champions Cup, the kind of the Jamaican Champions League. This is just, I mean, if you missed the episode where I talked about this game, we had 2 players sent off. Our goalkeeper got injured in extra time. We had a centre-back in goal for the penalty shootout. We finished the game with 8 men on the pitch. And we lost 8-7. I mean, can I like use that as an excuse? Is that my fault for being kind of naive? Is that the players' fault? I feel like it's a bit of a perfect storm and we were very unlucky. But, well, we're going to want to win this competition next year. Of course, it is a competition which kind of slots in and around the MLS playoffs if we get that far in the playoffs. So that is something to kind of consider. But at the same time, we can't really use that as an excuse. Our backup players should be willing to and be able, I guess, to play in this tournament and win it, and so to lose the final on penalties, just bitterly disappointing indeed. Of course, in the North American Champions League, we got given a very, very tough group. We were in Tigres and Saprisa's group. Of course, the Costa Rican side and the Mexican side, 2 very, very good sides. Saprissa, I believe they reached the knockout of the North American Champions League this year in real life. We kind of dispatched of them relatively easily, winning 7-0. You can see against Tigres, the Mexican champions. I don't think we disgraced ourselves. Of course, we lost 1 game at 1-0 against them. It could have been a few more. They did miss a penalty. And then in the return leg at home to get a draw, I definitely feel like this performance in the North American Champions League is something we can build upon. Of course, it's a tricky competition. And it's a competition where only the top team go through. And every year, we are going to get put in a group with either a Mexican or a USA side. And I feel like if we get put with a States kind of side, we have a fairly good chance of doing well in the competition. I guess the big kind of question mark is, how often are we going to get drawn against the Mexican sides? Because there is, I guess, more quality in Mexican football. There's not much of an argument there. And it's kind of going to be a case of... can we get an MLS side in the kind of group stage? Can we beat them? And then how is our look of the draw? How can we grind out results? You know, against Tigres, we almost did grind out a result. So I do feel like progression in the North American Champions League next year is possible. I feel like the main aim has got to be with the North American Champions League, let's try and get to the quarter-final next year. That would be a good achievement. Anyway, other competitions we've been involved in, there are none actually. There's the Eastern Conference games, of course, where we played in the playoffs. We, of course, beat Philadelphia very, very convincingly, 4-2 and then 1-0 to win 5-2 on aggregate. Unfortunately, that 4-0 defeat against Toronto really scuppered our chances of advancing at all in the competition. So anyway, looking at the players, looking at the team, of course, we were playing the narrower 4-3-1-2 this year. Obviously, with the limitations on the squad, the maximum squad size being 28 players, I feel like I perhaps made the mistake of investing too much in centre midfielders. I always knew I was going to want to play kind of this narrower 4-3-1-2 system. That was kind of always the tactic I had in my mind, particularly when early on in the kind of club's formation, we did get Daniel Johnson and Jermaine Anderson as players in, you know, 2 very, very high quality centre midfielders. But I'd like to open up our options. You know, I think there will be a little bit of transfer business that we do over the summer. There's definitely a few players, particularly kind of backup defenders who really just aren't good enough and are on a lot of money. I'm looking at the likes of O'Brien, Woodbrine here, who we're paying £200,000 a week, which for his ability is madness. You know, he's nowhere near kind of in line with the amount of money we're paying him. You can see he is the 5th highest earning player in the club in terms of salary cap impact. And well, that's kind of madness, particularly when Kamar Lawrence, who is by far and away a better player, is on a kind of a smaller wage. So he's one of the players I do want to get rid of. You can kind of see here, if we sort by cap impact, of course, this is the impact of these players' wages towards the salary cap, which I explained in the very first episode, but essentially is a league-imposed kind of wage budget, essentially. No team can exceed that, and the cap impact rather than the total wages is what counts towards this limit. You can see, for the most part, the players who are earning a lot of money are actually the players who are playing for us frequently, which is how it should be. I think you can get kind of caught in a trap in MLS of bringing in players and then you're paying them a lot of money, they're kind of counting a lot towards that wage cap, and in reality they're just not very good for the first team. You can kind of see here, there's a few players here who, you know, perhaps stick out, O'Brien Woodbrine being one of them. Maybe Alan Otti as well stands out. He's earning a fair bit, although in reality, he's not actually kind of contributing that much towards the wage cap. If we look at the squad registration here, you can see the maximum squad salary is £3.85 million a year. And we're right kind of under that at the moment when there's a few future transfers that have gone out. So there will be a little bit of wiggle room to bring in some players. In terms of where I'd like to improve the squad, squad. Obviously, Michael Carrick's contract is expiring. I'm not going to be extending it. The 36-year-old will, I believe, go into a draft where other MLS sides can look to pick him up. So we may end up playing against him next year, which could be interesting. But really, I think the centre of midfield, we could do with adding a little bit more quality. I'd like to maybe bring in a young goalkeeper. We do actually have one in our academy, I believe, who I have been kind of looking at as a player who could be a fairly useful player. This guy, Halliman. He looks good, 17 years old. I may well bring in him as kind of our second choice goalkeeper, try and develop him. There are a few kind of good little talents here actually in our kind of a Jamaican kind of youth side who I am looking at. So there is, a few players here who knows, maybe we'll bring one or two of them in because I don't know, there's some players with some ability here and it'd be interesting to get a few of them in. Of course, one player who did join us from our Jamaican academy side, Corey Binns, played a fair few games this year, and he's developed really, really well. 17 years old. I want to keep playing this guy. I definitely think he has a big future at our club. And I think a big challenge with MLS, particularly because of the wage limits, because the squad limitation, is actually being able to foster and develop talent. I kind of look at Corey Binns and also Kevin Hunt, the Trinidad and Tobago youngster, as the two players who I really want to start developing. I really want to start playing regular football. Kevin Hunt here, obviously, we signed him from FC Phoenix for $120,000, which is not a small fee really for a Trinidad and Tobago side to receive. Was playing in the Premier League there, where you can see he had a fantastic start. 11 assists, 6 player of the matches in 21 games at the age of, I think it was 17 when we signed him. Absolutely superb. This guy has a massive future. I really want to kind of develop him well. And we'll have to hope he's willing to stick it out of the club. I'm going to look, I think, to offer him a new contract over the summer, or rather the winter, because that is going to be important for us. But anyway, if we just look at the goal scorers here, you can see Andre Clennon. I said, big standout player for us. He got a lot of goals for us this year. I didn't really know what to expect from this guy. 28 years old, 17 goals in 27 games. That is a really, really impressive return for him. Obviously, 4 appearances for the national team now, yet to get off the mark for them, but I don't think that is too far away in reality. Another player who was a bit of a surprise package, Alan Otti, 12 goals in the MLS kind of tournament. You can see here he did also get 7 goals in the JFF Champions Cup, of course. A tournament I am using for players like Otti, players who are perhaps not quite a first-team player, but can develop well. Otti, I like this guy. He's a little bit one-dimensional in his play, but he did bang in a lot of goals for us, and he did get kind of Rookie of the Year this year, so definitely a player who I think you'll be seeing more of next season. Jason Johnson also chipped in with 19, a good little total for him. Definitely petered out towards the end of the season, was a player who kind of started for us initially with the arrival of Julian Green, kind of lost his spot in the first team, but he did play very, very well indeed for us early on. And a player who definitely deserves some plaudits. He did get 10 goals in the Caribbean Club Championship right at the start of the year. So perhaps his kind of total goals of the season kind of a little bit inflated. Daniel Johnson, already talked about him, but he was up there in the goal scoring. And Julian Green as well. Obviously, a younger player, 22 years old. He's kind of declined a little bit. Julian Green used to be a really, really good player in Football Manager. He'd always develop well. I believe his potential ability has taken a knock in this year's iteration. Which is a little bit of a shame for us, but I still think like this guy has some real ability to kind of achieve. He's 22, he can still develop a little bit. Obviously, regular first-team football is going to help him. And despite, only 8 goals in 23 games in MLS, it's certainly worth noting the fact he did get 2 goals in our Champions League campaign. And he really did chip in with a fair few important goals for us. And, 8 assists in MLS. He was a very good kind of unselfish striker as well, which is something I do kind of respect in my players. In terms of assists, O'Neill Fisher doing really, really well. Kind of the right back, of course. The most rememberable of his assists will be the Rabona, a player I brought in through the expansion draft. Came in, obviously, made 34 appearances this year, a 7.23 average rating, 10 assists. It's a little bit of a throwback to Football Manager 2016, isn't it, with a fullback getting loads of assists? But yeah, he really has chipped in with a fair few. Fabian McCarthy's also got a fair few as a centre-back. A little bit odd there. He's got... a lot of assists, actually, which is really weird. If we look at his stats here, you can see analysis. Where's the screen where you can see what position he's played? You can kind of see it here. So yeah, he's played a lot of most games as a centre-back or a left-back, and yet somehow he has... where are we looking? 2 assists in MLS, 2 assists in the JFF Champions Cup, 4 goals as well. He likes his goals, this guy. Really a bit of a surprise package. He did win Fans Player of the Year as well, which is a pretty impressive little achievement for him indeed. Other players, Ricardo Morris chipped in with a fair few assists this year. Of course, the player who came in, having played in Jamaica for most of his career, did have a brief stint at Tampa Bay Rowdies. Yeah, he really did kind of surprise me this year. He's put in some top performances. And another player who, we brought in for a very kind of small amount of money from kind of the domestic Jamaican league. And he really kind of found a place for himself in MLS this year. Anyway, I think that's going to wrap up today's episode from me. I really wanted to do a little bit of a squad rundown. If there's any kind of more specifics you'd like to see in these end-of-season reviews, please do let me know them. I'm kind of conscious about rambling too much, but I do feel like it's nice just to go through all the players, shine a little bit of a torch on some of the players that perhaps don't normally get the attention they deserve. As I said, all in all this year, very, very pleased. I've had a few people ask Jack, what is the main aim with this series? It is to win the North American Champions League. I don't want to set that as kind of the ultimate goal, because I feel like if you don't reach your goal, then people ultimately see a series as a failure, and if it ends sooner than that goal being achieved, it's kind of seen as a bit of a flop. And honestly, I've not managed that much in North America. I have no idea how hard it's going to be. Based off this first season, I think it's been a very, very solid start. I feel like next year, main aim has really got to be to challenge for the MLS Cup and Supporters Shield. And as I said, I'd like to get to the knockout stages of the North American Champions League if we can next year. But anyway, guys, that is going to wrap up everything from me. Thank you so much for watching as always. If you have enjoyed, please do leave a like. As I said, leave a comment, let me know what more you'd like to see in these end of season reviews. And other than that, it is me, Jack, and I will talk to you guys in a bit. I'm out.